Good evening, dear listeners. As you settle in for a restful night, I invite you to find a cozy spot, perhaps nestled under a soft blanket or resting in your favorite chair. This moment is dedicated to you, a gentle pause in the hustle and bustle of daily life, where we can explore the soothing and sometimes surprisingly intricate tapestry of history. Tonight, we will embark on a journey through the Byzantine Empire, focusing on a topic that may, at first glance, seem rather tedious: the imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes. In the soft glow of candlelight, allow your mind to wander as I unfold the layers of this historical narrative. The Byzantine Empire, a beacon of civilization, culture, and governance, thrived for over a millennium, leaving behind a legacy of remarkable achievements and complexities. As we delve into the meticulous processes that govern the issuance of documents and approvals, you may find a sense of tranquility in the rhythms of bureaucracy, a world where order and precision ruled. We will begin our exploration by understanding the significance of the imperial seal, a symbol of authority and legitimacy, wrapped in layers of tradition. Imagine the weight of that seal, as it was pressed into warm wax, the impression serving not just as a mark, but as a promise of authenticity and governance. Each application for approval was a delicate dance of formality, where scribes and officials meticulously reviewed documents, ensuring that every detail aligned with the rigid standards of the imperial court. Next, we will delve into the intricate timelines that govern these processes. Picture the candle flames flickering as the days turned into weeks, sometimes stretching into months, as each document awaited its turn in the grand machinery of the Byzantine state. The patience required in this era of slow deliberation can mirror our own need for pause and reflection in our fast-paced modern lives. In the stillness of the night, as you breathe deeply and let your worries drift away, consider how these lengthy processes were an essential part of maintaining order and stability in a vast empire. As we weave through our narrative, you will come to understand how each endorsement carried with it not just the weight of the seal but also the hopes and aspirations of countless individuals. Their stories, intertwined with the rigid processes of approval, will remind us of the humanity behind the history, a soothing reminder that even in the most tedious of tasks, there lies a thread of connection and purpose. Finally, we will reflect on the broader implications of these processes, considering how they shaped the very fabric of Byzantine society. As you listen, allow the gentle rhythm of my voice to lull you into a state of relaxation, encouraging you to let go of the day's stresses. So, dear listeners, as we prepare to dive into this calming exploration of the Byzantine imperial seal approval processes, I invite you to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the soothing whispers of history wash over you. In this tranquil space, we will find beauty in the details, a serene connection to the past, and perhaps even a sense of peace as we drift closer to sleep. Now, let us gently transition into our main content, where the whispers of history await. Together, we will uncover the fascinating world of Byzantine governance, a realm where patience and precision reign supreme. Allow the stories to envelop you as we begin our journey. The history of Byzantine imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes is a subject that has seldom garnered the attention it deserves. This account seeks to elucidate the intricate and often tedious procedures that characterize the bureaucratic machinery of the Byzantine Empire, particularly from its inception in 330 AD until the decline of Byzantine authority in the mid-15th century. The origins of the Byzantine imperial seal can be traced back to the establishment of Constantinople, formerly Byzantium, as the new capital of the Roman Empire by Emperor Constantine I. The year 330 AD marked a significant shift in administrative practices, as the move from Rome necessitated the development of new protocols for governance. The imperial seal, known as the bulla, served as a symbol of imperial authority and was critical in the authentication of documents, thereby ensuring that decrees and edicts bore the weight of the emperor's approval. The bulla itself was typically made of lead, approximately 4 to 5 centimeters in diameter, and featured the emperor's image alongside religious iconography. The craftsmanship of these seals was often intricate, reflecting the artistic prowess of Byzantine artisans. The early seals from the 4th century, for instance, displayed a simple yet elegant design, often depicting the emperor standing in a ceremonial pose, flanked by Christian symbols. As the Byzantine administrative apparatus evolved, so did the procedures surrounding document endorsement. By the 6th century, under the reign of Emperor Justinian I, a more structured approach to document management emerged. Justinian's reign, 527 to 565 AD, was marked by a notable consolidation of legal codes and bureaucratic practices, wherein the endorsement of documents became a pivotal function of the imperial administration. The Codex Justinianus established a framework that required official documents to be sealed, ensuring their legitimacy. The administrative procedures for document endorsement were meticulous. A typical day in the life of an imperial secretary, known as the notarios, involved the review and approval of numerous documents, each requiring careful scrutiny and the appropriate seals. The notarios would initially receive a petition or request, which would then be documented in a ledger. This ledger, often referred to as the logothetis, was a vital component of the administrative process, as it served as a record of all documents pending approval. Once a document was logged, it would be forwarded to the appropriate department for review. This could involve consultations with various officials, including the praefectus urbi, prefect of the city, or the strategos, military commander, depending on the nature of the document. This consultation process could take several days, as officials were often preoccupied with various administrative matters. The Byzantine bureaucracy was notoriously hierarchical, and decisions were seldom made without thorough deliberation. Following the consultations, the notarios would draft a summary of findings and recommendations, which would then be submitted to the emperor for final approval. The emperor, residing in the great palace of Constantinople, would often deal with such matters amid a plethora of other duties, including military campaigns, diplomatic negotiations, and religious affairs. The environment within the great palace was one of both grandeur and inefficiency, characterized by its opulent architecture, including the Golden Gate and the intricately adorned Hall of the 1,000 Columns, which housed numerous bureaucratic offices. The seal approval process itself involved a series of formalities that were both time-consuming and precise. The notarios would prepare the bulla, ensuring that the emperor's image was prominently displayed. The use of the seal was not merely a symbolic gesture, it was an essential act that conferred authority to the document. The bulla would be pressed into hot wax, which was then affixed to the document. This act required a significant amount of time, as the notarios often encountered issues such as the wax cooling too quickly or the seal not being properly aligned. The meticulous nature of this process meant that several documents could potentially be delayed, leading to backlogs. Moreover, the time frames for document endorsement varied considerably. Emergency decrees might be processed in a matter of days, whereas more routine documents could take weeks or even months to receive the necessary approvals. This variability was often exacerbated by the Byzantine bureaucracy's penchant for redundancy. Multiple copies of documents were frequently required, each needing its own seal, thereby compounding the time involved in the approval process. By the 9th century, during the reign of Emperor Basil I, 867 to 886 AD, the administrative processes became even more formalized. The introduction of the Basilica, a compilation of legal codes, further codified the bureaucratic frameworks governing seal approval and document endorsement. The Basilica delineated the roles and responsibilities of various officials, establishing a clearer hierarchy within the administrative structure. It also underscored the significance of the bulla, as it was now a legal requirement for certain types of documents, particularly those related to land grants and military appointments. Throughout the 10th and 11th centuries, the Byzantine Empire experienced a period of relative stability and prosperity, known as the Macedonian Renaissance. This era saw an increase in administrative complexity, with a corresponding rise in the volume of documents requiring endorsement. The seal approval processes evolved to accommodate these changes, with a greater emphasis on efficiency, even as the underlying bureaucratic inertia remained unchanged. The introduction of more specialized roles, such as the logothete, who focused solely on financial matters, reflected the empire's growing administrative demands. The architectural landscape of Constantinople during this time mirrored these administrative developments. The construction of the Church of the Holy Wisdom, known as Hagia Sophia, completed in 537 AD, symbolized the unity of church and state and served as a central location for imperial ceremonies, including those pertaining to the endorsement of key documents. The grandeur of Hagia Sophia, with its massive dome and intricate mosaics, served as a reminder of the imperial authority that the bulla represented. As the Byzantine Empire encountered external pressures in the late 11th and 12th centuries, including invasions from the Seljuk Turks and the Crusaders, the bureaucratic processes surrounding seal approval and document endorsement became increasingly strained. The Fourth Crusade, 1202 to 1204, resulted in the temporary fragmentation of the empire and a significant disruption in administrative practices. The loss of Constantinople in 1204 led to a decline in the efficacy of the endorsement processes, as the imperial seal itself was often captured or destroyed, resulting in a chaotic period wherein the legitimacy of documents was frequently called into question. In the subsequent years, particularly during the period of the Palaiologos dynasty, which began in 1261, efforts were made to restore the bureaucratic integrity of the Byzantine state. The revival of the imperial seal and the re-establishment of endorsement timeframes, while essential for restoring order, were met with challenges due to a lack of resources and the ongoing threat of external aggression. The Great Palace, which had once been a hub of administrative activity, became increasingly symbolic of a bygone era of imperial power. The final centuries of the Byzantine Empire, leading up to the fall of Constantinople in 1453, were characterized by a desperate attempt to maintain the bureaucratic legacy amidst encroaching Ottoman forces. The processes surrounding seal approvals and document endorsements remained in place, albeit with diminished authority and effectiveness. The last Byzantine emperors, such as Constantine XI Palaiologos, found themselves navigating an administrative landscape that was increasingly irrelevant in the face of external threats. In conclusion, the tedious history of Byzantine imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes illuminates the complexities and challenges faced by one of history's most enduring empires. From the establishment of Constantinople through the bureaucratic refinements of the Macedonian Renaissance, the processes surrounding the bulla evolved in accordance with the empire's administrative needs. However, the enduring nature of these procedures, coupled with the inevitable inefficiencies of bureaucracy, ultimately contributed to the decline of Byzantine authority. The legacy of these processes, while often overlooked, remains a testament to the intricate interplay between governance, authority, and administrative practice in the annals of history. The Byzantine Empire, which thrived from approximately 330 AD to 1453 AD, was renowned not only for its sophisticated administrative apparatus but also for the meticulous construction methods and materials employed in its bureaucratic infrastructure. This intricate framework supported the various seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes, which, while ostensibly tedious, were crucial for imperial governance. Construction methods and materials. The construction of administrative buildings, such as the imperial chancery, was characterized by a variety of techniques that evolved over the centuries. The foundational elements often included a combination of stone and brick. The use of local limestone for the lower courses of walls was prevalent, particularly in urban centers like Constantinople, where quarries provided a steady supply. The upper structures frequently consisted of fired bricks, which were known for their durability and fire resistance. A notable example is the Great Palace of Constantinople, completed in the 6th century AD, utilizing a combination of solid masonry and intricate arches. In addition to stone and brick, timber was employed for roofing and flooring, primarily sourced from the extensive forests of Thrace. The use of timber was particularly advantageous due to its lightweight properties, which allowed for more elaborate roof structures. The roofs were often covered with terracotta tiles, meticulously crafted to fit together seamlessly, ensuring water drainage and insulation. The craftsmanship involved in these tiles highlighted the importance of aesthetics alongside functionality, reflecting the Byzantine emphasis on both practical and visual harmony. In the broader context of construction, skilled labor was essential. Artisans trained in specific trades, such as masonry, carpentry, and tile-making, were organized into guilds. These guilds were responsible for maintaining standards of quality and technique, often passing down knowledge through generations. Records from the 9th century suggest that the construction of a single administrative structure could take several years, with timelines varying based on the complexity of design and the availability of materials. Maintenance procedures. Maintenance of administrative buildings was as rigorous as their construction. Regular inspections were mandated, with a detailed log maintained to track the condition of roofs, walls, and interiors. The Byzantine legal code, specifically the Basilica, outlined responsibilities for maintenance, with local officials accountable for the upkeep of public structures. It was common practice to conduct maintenance every 5 years, although urgent repairs were often implemented as necessary. For instance, the wooden beams supporting roofing structures required periodic replacement, typically every 15 to 20 years, depending on environmental factors such as moisture and insect infestation. The process of replacing these beams involved a careful inspection of the remaining structure to ensure stability. The Byzantine administration often allocated funds specifically for maintenance from the imperial treasury, with detailed financial records documenting expenditures on materials and labor. In the case of the imperial chancery, which housed crucial administrative functions, maintenance procedures included regular cleaning and restoration of decorative elements, such as frescoes and mosaics. These maintenance tasks were often supervised by a designated steward, whose responsibilities were outlined in a series of bureaucratic manuals. The steward was accountable for hiring laborers and managing the materials budget, ensuring that the structures remained in optimal condition for the continued functioning of the seal approval processes. Financial records and costs. The financial aspects of maintaining the Byzantine administrative infrastructure were meticulously recorded. Every expenditure was documented, with detailed accounts reflecting the costs of materials, labor, and administrative overhead. For example, in the year 1025 AD, during the reign of Emperor Basil II, expenditures related to the maintenance of the imperial chancery were reported to total approximately 1,200 solidi, a significant sum that illustrates the financial commitment to administrative efficiency. The costs associated with construction and maintenance were typically funded through a combination of taxes levied on the populace and state revenues from imperial estates. The Byzantine tax system was complex, involving various forms of taxation, including land taxes, trade tariffs, and occasional special levies for extraordinary expenditures. The financial records were meticulously kept by a cadre of scriveners, who were responsible for maintaining the integrity of these accounts. Each scrivener was expected to possess knowledge of arithmetic and accounting principles, with some records dating back to the 10th century revealing the use of abacus-like devices for calculations. The financial records also included detailed descriptions of materials purchased, the prices paid, and labor costs. For example, a single unit of high-quality terracotta roofing tile might be recorded at a rate of 5 denarii, while skilled labor for artisans could command a wage of 12 denarii per day. Such records not only facilitated transparency in financial dealings but also served as a historical archive of economic conditions during various periods of the Byzantine Empire. Personnel and job descriptions. The personnel involved in the Byzantine seal approval processes and document endorsement were numerous and varied. Each position was clearly defined, with specific responsibilities outlined in various administrative manuals. The highest-ranking official in the imperial chancery was the logothetes, who oversaw all written communications and sealings. The logothetes was supported by a team of junior clerks, known as chartularioi, who handled the day-to-day tasks of drafting documents and managing records. The role of the logothetes was multifaceted, requiring not only administrative acumen but also a deep understanding of legal and diplomatic protocols. This position was often filled by individuals with extensive education, typically having graduated from the prestigious schools of Constantinople, where they studied subjects such as law, rhetoric, and philosophy. In addition to clerks, the imperial seal was managed by a specialized group known as the sigilographers. These individuals were responsible for the production and maintenance of the imperial seal, a highly symbolic object that represented the authority of the emperor. The sigilographers were skilled artisans who worked with materials such as bronze, wax, and occasionally precious metals to create seals that were both functional and artistically significant. The production of a single seal could take several weeks and involved intricate engraving techniques that highlighted the emperor's image and titles. Supporting these core administrative roles were various auxiliary staff members, including messengers, who were crucial for the transmission of endorsed documents throughout the empire. The messengers were often selected for their speed and reliability, and they underwent rigorous training to navigate the complex network of roads and waterways that connected the vast territories of the Byzantine Empire. Technical specifications. The technical specifications for document endorsement and seal approval processes were elaborate and well documented. Each document intended for imperial approval had to adhere to specific formats and protocols established by the chancery. A standard document would typically measure 29 by 42 centimeters, with a well-defined margin of 2 centimeters on all sides to accommodate the seal. The content of such documents followed a standardized template, beginning with a formal address to the emperor, followed by a clear statement of purpose, details of the request or decree, and concluding with a space designated for the signature of the logothetes and the affixed seal. The use of specific ink formulations was also governed by tradition. Black ink was preferred for official documents, while red ink was often reserved for urgent communications. The seal itself, once affixed, represented not merely the approval of the document but also the authority vested in the emperor. The dimensions of the seal typically ranged from 8 to 10 centimeters in diameter, with intricate designs often including the cross, the emperor's portrait, and inscriptions in Greek. The process of sealing involved a wax disc, heated and pressed with the engraved seal, creating a tangible mark of authenticity. In summary, the Byzantine Empire's bureaucratic system was characterized by its complex construction methods and materials, stringent maintenance procedures, meticulous financial record-keeping, well-defined personnel roles, and precise technical specifications. This intricate web of processes not only facilitated the functioning of seal approval and document endorsement but also reflected the broader principles of governance and authority that underpinned Byzantine society. The legacy of these processes, while often deemed tedious, offers a profound insight into the administrative sophistication of one of history's most enduring empires. The construction methods employed in the administrative buildings of the Byzantine Empire were reflective of the era's architectural ingenuity, coupled with an adherence to traditional practices that had evolved over centuries. The foundational structures were predominantly constructed using locally sourced materials, including limestone, marble, and brick. The use of limestone, for instance, can be traced back to the early Christian period, particularly from the 4th century CE onwards, where its availability in proximity to major urban centers such as Constantinople facilitated its widespread use. The average dimension of limestone blocks used in these constructions typically ranged from 30 cm x 60 cm x 90 cm, allowing for both structural integrity and ease of transport. By the late 6th century, the Byzantine builders began employing a more systematic approach to masonry, frequently utilizing a combination of brick and mortar. This technique not only enhanced the strength of walls but also allowed for a more efficient construction process, reducing the time required for completion. The famed Hagia Sophia, completed in 537 CE under the direction of Emperor Justinian I, exemplifies the advanced techniques of the period, showcasing a dome that spans 31 meters in diameter, supported by pendentives that distribute weight effectively. In terms of maintenance procedures, the Byzantine bureaucracy established meticulous protocols to ensure the longevity of these structures. Regular inspections were mandated, with a particular emphasis on the integrity of roofs and walls, which were prone to deterioration due to weather conditions. The appointment of supervisors, known as episkopoi, would occur every 5 years, with their duties explicitly outlined to include the assessment of structural damage and the implementation of necessary repairs. The standard procedure for maintenance involved the use of a mixture of lime and sand, known as lime mortar, which was mixed in a ratio of 1:3 for optimal adhesion and durability. Financial records pertaining to the construction and maintenance of administrative buildings were meticulously documented in the Logothetes II Genikou, a central treasury office responsible for overseeing state expenditures. Each project was assigned a specific fiscal code, enabling the tracking of costs associated with labor, materials, and administrative fees. For instance, during the construction of the Basilica of San Vitale in Ravenna, records indicate that the total expenditure amounted to approximately 25,000 solidi, a substantial sum at the time. Labor costs were further itemized, with wages for skilled masons averaging 12 solidi per month, while unskilled laborers received approximately 3 solidi for the same period. The personnel involved in these construction and maintenance processes were diverse, with clearly delineated job descriptions to ensure efficient workflow. The architekton, or chief architect, held the highest authority on construction projects. This individual was typically appointed based on experience and prior accomplishments, often requiring at least 2 decades of experience in architectural design and construction. Beneath the architekton were the site foremen, or epistats, who managed day-to-day operations. These foremen were responsible for overseeing laborers, ensuring that tasks were completed according to specified guidelines and quality standards. The workforce comprised skilled artisans, including masons, carpenters, and painters, each contributing uniquely to the construction process. Masons were expected to work with precision, often utilizing tools such as chisels and hammers, which had standardized dimensions. For instance, the average chisel measured approximately 2 centimeters in width and 25 centimeters in length, allowing for detailed stonework. Carpenters, on the other hand, employed timber sourced from local forests, with oak and pine being the preferred materials due to their availability and sturdiness. The dimensions of beams typically ranged from 10 cm x 10 cm for smaller structures to 20 cm x 20 cm for larger edifices. Technical specifications for buildings were outlined in comprehensive blueprints, which detailed not only the architectural design but also the materials to be used and the construction methods to be employed. These documents were rigorously reviewed by the state officials before approval, ensuring adherence to imperial standards. The blueprints often included elevations, cross-sections, and detailed measurements, with a common practice of indicating dimensions in Roman feet, where 1 foot equaled approximately 29.6 centimeters. In addition to the physical construction of buildings, the Byzantine Empire also invested heavily in the development of administrative tools that facilitated the seal approval processes integral to governance. The production of seals was a highly specialized craft, requiring skilled artisans who could meticulously engrave designs that signified authenticity and authority. The seals themselves were typically composed of bronze or lead, with diameters ranging from 4 to 10 centimeters, depending on their intended use. Each seal featured a unique emblem, often incorporating the image of the reigning emperor, which served to legitimize documents issued by the state. The financial implications of seal production were significant, requiring detailed accounting practices to manage costs effectively. Records from the 9th century reveal that the production of a single seal could cost upwards of 50 solidi, accounting for both materials and labor. The artisans responsible for crafting these seals were usually organized into guilds, which regulated both quality and pricing, ensuring that standards remained consistent across the empire. Furthermore, the maintenance of these seals was equally important, as their integrity directly impacted the validity of documents. Protocols were established to inspect seals regularly, with a focus on ensuring that engravings remained clear and that the physical condition of the seals did not deteriorate. The standard practice involved the use of wax or clay impressions, which were tested for durability. The average lifespan of a wax seal was estimated at approximately 5 years before requiring replacement due to wear. The Byzantine administrative framework also necessitated a clear delineation of roles among personnel involved in the endorsement of documents. The phlogothetes, or secretary, played a pivotal role in the documentation process, overseeing the drafting and verification of all official papers. This position required a profound understanding of legal terminology and the ability to navigate complex bureaucratic procedures. The average logothetes would manage a team of clerks, each responsible for maintaining records and ensuring that all documents were appropriately endorsed with the requisite imperial seal. Clerks typically received an annual salary of approximately 200 solidi, reflecting their importance within the administrative hierarchy. The process of document endorsement itself was methodical, often taking several weeks to complete. Once a document was drafted, it would undergo a series of reviews, with designated officials assessing its content for accuracy and compliance with imperial law. The final step involved the application of the imperial seal, which was often performed in the presence of the emperor or a high-ranking official to ensure authenticity. The time frame for this process could vary, but it was not uncommon for the endorsement of a single document to take upwards of 30 days, particularly for matters of significant legal or financial consequence. In conclusion, the Byzantine Empire's meticulous attention to the construction, maintenance, and administrative processes surrounding imperial seals and document endorsement highlights the intricate systems that underpinned its governance. The use of specified materials, defined roles, and rigorous financial oversight reflects a society committed to preserving the integrity and authority of its administrative functions. Such detailed practices, though often viewed as tedious, were essential for maintaining the stability and continuity of one of history's most enduring empires. The construction methods and materials utilized in the production of Byzantine imperial seals and the associated documentation were subject to a highly regulated process, reflecting the empire's bureaucratic precision. The seals were primarily crafted from a variety of metals, including bronze, silver, and occasionally gold, with bronze being the most prevalent due to its availability and workability. The choice of materials was dictated by both economic considerations and the status of the documents being endorsed. The typical dimensions for a bronze seal would be approximately 4 to 6 centimeters in diameter, with an average thickness of 0.5 centimeters. The design of the seal often involved intricate engravings, which required skilled artisans known as seal engravers, or sigillographers. The process of engraving would commence with the selection of a high-quality bronze blank, which was then heated and struck with a hammer to achieve the desired thickness and flatness. Following this, a design pattern was meticulously carved into the surface of the seal using chisels and other specialized tools. This procedure, which could take several weeks depending on the complexity of the design, would culminate in the creation of a raised image, often depicting the emperor or a significant religious symbol. Maintenance procedures for the seals were equally rigorous, ensuring that they remained in pristine condition for use. Seals, particularly those used for high-level documents, were subject to regular inspections, typically biannually. During these inspections, officials would assess the integrity of the seal, examining for any signs of wear, corrosion, or damage that may compromise the clarity of the impression. If deterioration was observed, the seal was sent to a designated workshop for restoration. This would involve polishing the surface with fine abrasives, such as powdered pumice or emery, and, if necessary, re-engraving to restore any lost detail. The cost of such maintenance procedures was recorded meticulously in the imperial financial ledgers, with expenditures often exceeding several denarii, particularly for seals made from precious metals. Financial records pertaining to the production and maintenance of seals were systematically documented in the imperial treasury's archives. The costs associated with the initial creation of a seal were categorized into several distinct areas: raw materials, labor, and administrative overhead. For instance, in the year 1065 CE, the cost of bronze was recorded at approximately 2 denarii per kilogram, with an average seal requiring 0.25 kilograms of metal. Thus, the raw material cost alone for a single seal would amount to half a denarius. Labor costs were significantly more variable, depending on the skill level of the engraver and the intricacy of the design. It was not uncommon for skilled artisans to command fees of 5 to 10 denarii for their services, which could represent a considerable investment for the imperial treasury. The personnel involved in the seal approval and document endorsement processes were organized into a hierarchical structure. At the apex of this hierarchy was the emperor, who served as the ultimate authority for all endorsements. Below the emperor were the high-ranking officials, known as the logothetes, who were responsible for the oversight of the imperial bureaucracy. The logothete of the general affairs, for example, would oversee the general administration of seals, ensuring that all protocols were followed and that the seals were applied correctly to official documents. Each logothete had a team of clerks, known as grammates, who were tasked with the preparation of documents for endorsement. These clerks were often educated individuals, well versed in the complexities of bureaucratic language and skilled in the art of calligraphy. Their job description included drafting letters, compiling administrative reports, and ensuring that all necessary documentation accompanied the seals for approval. The clerks would meticulously document the date of each endorsement, the name of the official responsible for the approval, and the specific purpose of the document in the financial ledgers. Technical specifications for the seals themselves were standardized to ensure consistency across the empire. The imperial seals would typically feature specific dimensions and design elements that conformed to established protocols. For example, the imperial seal of the Byzantine emperor during the 11th century was characterized by a circular shape, with an average diameter of 5 centimeters. The design would usually include the inscription, Basileus, Emperor, encircling a central image of Christ or the Virgin Mary. The font used for the inscriptions adhered to a specific style known as uncial, which was a script characterized by its rounded letters. In addition to the seals, there were also specific guidelines for the documents themselves. The parchment used for official correspondence was typically made from the hides of sheep or goats, with a standard measurement of approximately 30 centimeters by 25 centimeters. Each sheet of parchment underwent a rigorous preparation process, which included soaking, scraping, and smoothing to achieve the desired texture for writing. The cost of parchment was recorded at approximately 1 denarius per sheet, and it was not uncommon for high-ranking documents to require multiple sheets, particularly when detailed accounts or lengthy correspondence were involved. Document endorsement timeframes were another critical aspect of the Byzantine administrative processes. The approval process for an imperial seal typically involved several stages, beginning with the drafting of the document by a clerk, followed by a review by the logothete. This review period could last anywhere from several days to weeks, depending on the complexity of the document and its implications for imperial policy. Once the logothete was satisfied with the content, the document would be forwarded to the emperor for final approval. Upon receiving the document, the emperor would often set it aside for further consideration, reflecting the deliberative nature of Byzantine governance. The time taken for the emperor to render a decision could vary significantly, ranging from a matter of days to several months. Historical records indicate that during critical periods, such as the disputes over succession in the late 11th century, the approval process could become protracted, leading to delays in the issuance of essential documents. Once an endorsement was granted, the seal would be affixed to the document, typically with a ribbon made from linen or silk, which was tied in a specific manner to signify authenticity. This method of attachment was standardized, with the ribbon being approximately 1 centimeter wide and 50 centimeters long. The seal would then be impressed upon the document, creating a distinct and recognizable mark that served as a guarantee of authenticity and imperial authority. In conclusion, the Byzantine imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes were characterized by meticulous attention to detail and an unwavering commitment to bureaucratic rigor. From the construction methods and materials used in seal production to the personnel involved in the endorsement processes, each element was governed by a set of established protocols designed to maintain the stability of the imperial administration. The financial records, maintenance procedures, and technical specifications exemplified the empire's dedication to thoroughness and precision, underscoring the importance of these ostensibly mundane activities in the broader context of Byzantine governance. The construction methods and materials utilized in the production of the Byzantine imperial seals and the associated documents were governed by a set of regulations that reflected the empire's commitment to durability and aesthetic integrity. The seals, primarily made of metal, predominantly employed bronze and silver, with gold being reserved for the highest echelons of imperial authority. The choice of materials was dictated not only by their availability but also by their symbolic resonance. The use of bronze, which was both cost-effective and readily accessible, was standard for official documents, while silver provided a degree of prestige reserved for more significant endorsements. The manufacturing process began with the casting of the seal, which typically measured approximately 5 to 10 centimeters in diameter. Artisans employed the lost wax casting method, a technique that dates back to antiquity and was perfected during the Byzantine period. This involved creating a wax model of the seal, which was then encased in a clay mold. Once the mold was heated, the wax melted away, leaving a cavity into which molten metal could be poured. This meticulous process ensured that each seal bore the intricate designs that denoted the authority of the emperor, featuring symbols such as the double-headed eagle or the Christogram, alongside inscriptions in both Greek and Latin. Maintenance procedures for the seals were equally methodical. Regular inspections were mandated, with a detailed log maintained to document the condition of each seal. By the 10th century, it became common practice to clean the seals using a solution of vinegar and water, a procedure intended to remove oxidation and prevent corrosion. The seals were stored in climate-controlled environments to mitigate the effects of humidity, which could accelerate the degradation of the metal. Each seal was assigned a unique identification number, which was recorded in the maintenance log alongside details of the last inspection date and the name of the responsible clerk. The meticulous nature of these records underscored the significance attributed to the seals within the bureaucratic framework of the empire. Financial records related to the production and maintenance of the imperial seals were kept in accordance with the budgeting systems established under Emperor Justinian I in the 6th century. The costs associated with the procurement of materials, labor, and maintenance were categorized under a specific heading in the imperial treasury known as seal expenditures. For example, in the year 986, the total expenditure on seal production was recorded at 1,200 solidi, with a breakdown indicating that 600 solidi were allocated to the purchase of bronze, 400 solidi for labor costs, and 200 solidi for maintenance supplies. Detailed financial records allowed for the assessment of budgetary compliance and ensured that resources were appropriately allocated to this crucial administrative function. Personnel involved in the seal approval process were delineated by specific job descriptions that outlined their responsibilities and hierarchies. At the top of the administrative ladder was the logothete, a title that translated to "keeper of the words." This individual was responsible for overseeing the entire document endorsement process, including the affixing of the seal. Supporting the logothete were various clerks and scribes, each with defined roles. For instance, the scribe of the seal was tasked with the meticulous drafting of documents that required imperial approval, ensuring that all legal and formal language adhered to established protocols. The number of personnel involved in this process could vary based on the volume of documents requiring endorsements, with estimates suggesting that during peak periods, as many as 20 clerks and scribes could be engaged at the imperial chancellery. The technical specifications governing the production of seals were laid out in a series of edicts and guidelines issued by various emperors throughout the centuries. These specifications included detailed measurements for the seals, which were to be precisely 7.5 centimeters in diameter, with an allowable variance of no more than 0.5 centimeters. Additionally, the depth of the design on the seal was stipulated to be between 1 to 2 centimeters, ensuring that the impression left on wax or parchment would be clear and legible. In terms of design, the use of specific engravings was dictated by the type of document being endorsed. For instance, seals used for official decrees often featured a depiction of the emperor enthroned, while those for lesser administrative functions might display more generic symbols, such as the imperial monogram. The endorsement time frames for documents were rigorously regulated, with specific timelines established for each stage of the approval process. From the moment a document was submitted for review, it was to be processed within a maximum of 7 days, a stipulation that was reinforced through the issuance of the Edict of Expedience in 1045. This edict mandated that all documents requiring seal endorsement be prioritized to ensure efficient governance. The subsequent steps included initial review by the logothete, followed by a final approval from the emperor or a designated representative. In practice, however, delays were not uncommon, often due to the sheer volume of documents or the intricacies involved in the approval process. It was not unusual for certain documents to remain pending for weeks or even months, particularly during periods of political turmoil or during the transition of power. The Byzantine administration also established a system of prioritization based on the nature of the documents. For instance, documents pertaining to military appointments or diplomatic relations were afforded expedited processing times, often completed within a mere 3 days. Conversely, less urgent matters, such as local administrative issues, could languish in the queue for upwards of 2 months. This system was recorded meticulously in the Chronicles of Document Processing, a comprehensive ledger that detailed the status and processing times of all documents submitted for seal approval during each reign. In conclusion, the Byzantine imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes, while seemingly mundane, were underpinned by a complex web of construction methods, maintenance procedures, financial oversight, personnel hierarchies, and technical specifications. These activities exemplified the empire's unwavering commitment to bureaucratic efficiency and precision, ensuring that even the most trivial of documents were imbued with the authority of the state. The extensive regulations governing these processes not only facilitated governance but also reflected the intricate interplay between material culture and administrative function within the Byzantine Empire. The construction methods and materials utilized in the production of the Byzantine imperial seals and the associated documents were governed by a set of regulations that reflected the empire's commitment to durability and aesthetic integrity. The seals, primarily made of metal, predominantly employed bronze and silver, with gold being reserved for the highest echelons of imperial authority. The choice of materials was dictated not only by their availability but also by their symbolic resonance. Byzantine seals were not merely functional, they were also artistic masterpieces that conveyed power, legitimacy, and divine favor. The use of bronze, for instance, was prevalent from the early Byzantine period, around the 4th century AD, through to the empire's decline in the 15th century. Bronze seals, known for their resilience and cost-effectiveness, became particularly popular among officials and clergy, representing a balance between accessibility and prestige. The alloy typically consisted of approximately 90% copper, 10% tin, and sometimes small amounts of lead to enhance malleability. This combination produced seals that were both durable and capable of intricate engravings. Silver seals began to emerge more prominently during the reign of Emperor Justinian I, who ruled from 527 to 565 AD. Silver was often associated with higher status and was used to signify imperial decrees or important documents. The silver used for these seals was typically at least 92.5% pure, often referred to as sterling silver, and was crafted with great care to ensure that the imagery and inscriptions were both clear and enduring. The techniques employed for engraving silver seals required skilled artisans who would meticulously carve designs that often featured imperial iconography, including the double-headed eagle and the Christogram, symbols deeply embedded in Byzantine identity. Gold seals, however, were the pinnacle of imperial communication. Reserved for the emperor and a select few high-ranking officials, gold seals were often adorned with elaborate designs and precious stones. The gold content in these seals would be at least 22 carats, ensuring their luster and durability. The production of a gold seal involved a multi-step process. First, gold would be smelted and poured into molds to form a blank. Next, artisans would hammer the gold into desired shapes before engraving intricate designs that frequently depicted the emperor in a portrait or a religious figure, thereby reinforcing the divine right of kings. One notable example of a gold seal is that of Emperor Constantine VI, who ruled from 780 to 797 AD. His seal depicted a striking image of the emperor in military regalia, holding a cross, symbolizing his role as both a secular and spiritual leader. The craftsmanship of such seals often included the use of cloisonné techniques, where small compartments were created within the metal to hold colored enamel, further enhancing their visual appeal. In addition to the materials and artistry, the production of these seals involved a structured process that began with design conception. Artisans would often collaborate with imperial officials to ensure that the imagery reflected the desired message. Once a design was approved, the seal would be cast, often using the lost wax method, which allowed for detailed and precise replication of the designs. This method involved creating a wax model of the seal, encasing it in a mold, and then melting the wax away to leave a hollow space into which molten metal could be poured. Seals were not only instruments of authority but also served as essential tools in the administration of the Byzantine Empire. The issuance of a seal was often accompanied by a document known as a crucible, a royal decree that conferred certain rights or privileges. These documents were typically written on high-quality parchment made from animal skins, which had been carefully processed and treated. The parchment's durability was critical, particularly for documents intended to be preserved for posterity. The historical context surrounding the use of seals in the Byzantine Empire is rich and complex. During the 6th century, as the empire expanded and consolidated its power, the use of seals became increasingly sophisticated. The establishment of an elaborate bureaucratic system necessitated a reliable means of authentication, and seals became indispensable in every level of administration. Moreover, the increasing influence of the Orthodox Church during this period resulted in ecclesiastical seals that often bore religious symbols and were used to validate church documents, further intertwining the state's authority with religious legitimacy. The significance of these seals extended beyond mere documentation. They were also vital in diplomatic relations. Byzantine ambassadors would carry sealed letters to foreign powers, where the seal's authenticity signified the message's legitimacy. This practice underscored the empire's diplomatic sophistication, demonstrating the importance placed on both the material quality of seals and their symbolic meanings within the broader context of Byzantine governance. In summary, the construction of Byzantine imperial seals was a meticulous process that combined artistry, material science, and administrative necessity. The metals used, bronze, silver, and gold, each carried distinct meanings and levels of prestige, reflecting the hierarchical nature of Byzantine society. As the empire evolved, so too did the techniques and symbolism embedded in these seals, making them enduring artifacts of an empire that valued both beauty and authority. The tedious history of Byzantine imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes. Regional variations and comparisons. In the vast expanse of the Byzantine Empire, which spanned 3 continents at its height, the processes surrounding seal approval and document endorsement were not uniform. These variations were largely a reflection of local traditions, administrative structures, and the geographic distinctions within the empire's provinces. For instance, the administration in Constantinople, the imperial capital, was markedly different from that in the provinces such as Thrace, Asia Minor, and the more distant regions of the Balkans and Egypt. In Constantinople, the seal approval process was characterized by a hierarchical system of bureaucratic oversight that involved multiple layers of scrutiny. The use of elaborate seals, often made from precious metals, was not merely a formality. It was a status symbol that conveyed the authority of the emperor. Documents originating from the capital typically underwent a rigorous endorsement process, which included the scrutiny of not only the emperor's immediate advisors but also the heads of various departments, such as the logothete of the course or the praefectus urbi. Comparatively, in provinces such as Anatolia, the processes were more streamlined and less ceremonial, often relying on local officials who wielded considerable autonomy. Here, the provincial governors, or strategoi, would have more leeway in approving documents, especially those pertaining to land transactions and military requisitions. Moreover, the geographic isolation of some provinces led to distinct practices. For example, in the far reaches of the empire, such as the islands of the Aegean Sea or the rugged terrain of the Caucasus, local customs, and the influence of previous administrative systems, such as Roman or even Hellenistic practices, could still be observed. In these areas, seals might be less ornate, reflecting a more practical approach to governance where efficient communication was prioritized over the elaborate ceremonial traditions of the center. Evolution over different time periods. The Byzantine seal approval processes and endorsement timeframes underwent significant evolution from the early Byzantine period, circa 330 AD, through to the fall of Constantinople in 1453. Initially, during the reign of Constantine the Great, the administrative apparatus was relatively rudimentary. Documents were often sealed with the emperor's signet, which was a simple impression made from a personal ring. This practice signified direct imperial endorsement and was sufficient in the eyes of the populace. As the empire expanded and administrative needs became more complex, particularly during the reign of Justinian I, 527 to 565 AD, the bureaucratic processes were formalized. The introduction of a more codified legal framework, encapsulated in the Corpus Juris Civilis, necessitated a more structured approach to document endorsement. This period saw the establishment of designated clerks and notaries who specialized in the preparation and authentication of documents, which led to the emergence of a more systemic approach to seal approval. The Middle Byzantine period, circa 843–1204 AD, marked an era of further refinement. The introduction of the chrysabule, a golden bull or decree sealed with a gold leaf seal, represented a significant milestone in the approval process for important documents, especially those involving land grants or imperial privileges. The endorsement timeframe during this period often extended as documents were subjected to rigorous review by multiple agencies, reflecting the empire's increasing complexity and the necessity for thorough bureaucratic oversight. In the late Byzantine period, particularly post-1204 following the Fourth Crusade, the restoration of the Byzantine Empire in 1261 saw a return to more traditional practices, albeit with the influences of Latin administrative systems. The necessity to re-establish order led to a revival of older seal practices, but the logistics of document approval became increasingly complicated due to the empire's diminished territorial integrity and the need to engage with various foreign powers. The time frame for endorsements lengthened as a result of both internal strife and external pressures. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The Byzantine Empire was governed by a labyrinthine set of bureaucratic regulations that dictated the processes involved in seal approval and document endorsement. These regulations were often codified in elaborate legal texts and decrees that sought to standardize practices across the vast empire. The Ekliga, a legal code issued in the 8th century, is one such example that provided explicit guidelines on various administrative procedures, including the requirements for valid seals and the necessary steps for document approval. For instance, one regulation mandated that all official documents must bear the imperial seal in order to be considered valid. This requirement was not merely a legalistic formality but served to uphold the sanctity of imperial authority. The seal was often accompanied by a written endorsement from the issuing authority, which detailed the nature of the document and its intended purpose. Such regulations were essential in preventing forgery and ensuring that documents could be reliably traced back to their origins. The complexity of these bureaucratic regulations increased over time, with additional stipulations being added to address emerging challenges. In the 10th century, for example, the rise of the Byzantine military aristocracy necessitated the introduction of regulations governing military-related documents. The overly complicated approval processes for military commissions and land grants reflected a growing concern regarding the influence of powerful local leaders and the potential for abuse of power. Additionally, Byzantine law often mandated specific time frames for document processing, which could vary depending on the nature of the document and its urgency. Routine endorsements might require a few days, while more significant documents, particularly those involving the allocation of resources or military appointments, could take weeks or even months to finalize. These time frames were formally recorded in administrative logs, creating a system of accountability that was critical for the functioning of the Byzantine bureaucracy. Supply chain and logistics. The endorsement of documents in the Byzantine Empire was not merely an abstract bureaucratic exercise, it was deeply intertwined with the supply chain and logistical considerations of the time. The transportation of documents, especially those requiring imperial approval, often involved considerable effort, as they had to traverse vast distances across the empire's varied terrain. This was particularly notable in regions where communication infrastructure was underdeveloped. The logistics of document transport were governed by a series of protocols that dictated how documents were to be conveyed from one official to another. Couriers, often referred to as dromedarii, played a crucial role in this process. These individuals were trained messengers responsible for delivering documents, and they adhered to strict guidelines regarding speed and security. The use of mounted couriers for urgent documents was common, while slower overland routes were employed for less time-sensitive materials. In addition to the human element, physical resources such as ink, parchment, and seals also formed part of the logistical equation. The production of these materials was itself a regulated industry within the empire, with specific suppliers designated for government use. The sourcing of high-quality parchment, for example, was essential for the production of official documents, as the durability and presentation of the material reflected upon the imperial authority. The seal's material, often wax or metal, was also subject to quality checks, ensuring that only the most appropriate materials were used in official endorsements. Moreover, the interconnectedness of various provinces meant that the logistical aspects of seal approval were influenced by local economies. For instance, regions renowned for their production of specialized goods, such as textiles or ceramics, would often have their own systems of endorsement and documentation that facilitated trade and commerce. The need for efficient document management in these economically significant areas led to a hybridization of local practices with imperial regulations, resulting in a patchwork of endorsement processes across the empire. Record-keeping methods. The Byzantine Empire's approach to record-keeping was meticulous, reflecting the importance of documentation in governance and administration. Official records were maintained in various formats, ranging from ledgers to scrolls, and these documents served as vital references for bureaucratic processes, including seal approvals and endorsements. The Chancellery, or Basilike Grammatea, played a pivotal role in this record-keeping tradition. This institution was responsible for the production and maintenance of official documents, and it employed a cadre of scribes who specialized in various forms of writing, including the use of cursive and formal scripts. The organization of records was often hierarchical, with different departments maintaining their own archives, which facilitated the retrieval of documents as needed. An important aspect of Byzantine record-keeping was the use of carta, a term that referred to both paper and parchment documents. The introduction of paper in the empire during the 11th century revolutionized record-keeping methods, as it was more cost-effective and easier to produce than parchment. The transition to this new medium, however, was gradual and met with initial resistance from traditionalists who favored the established use of parchment for official documents. The preservation of documents also involved intricate storage practices. Archives were often housed in secure locations, such as the Great Palace of Constantinople, where they were organized chronologically and thematically. The maintenance of these records was seen as a crucial aspect of governance, as it ensured that the imperial decisions could be traced, reviewed, and audited. The meticulous nature of Byzantine record-keeping has left historians with a rich repository of documents that illuminate the complexities of governance and administration within the empire. In conclusion, the Byzantine imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes were characterized by regional variations, bureaucratic regulations, logistical challenges, and diligent record-keeping methods. The evolution of these processes over time reflects the interplay between tradition and adaptation, illustrating how the Byzantine Empire navigated the complexities of governance across its vast and diverse territories. The interplay of these mundane aspects, while seemingly tedious, underscores the intricate web of administration that sustained one of history's most influential empires. The tedious history of Byzantine imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes has, thus far, examined the core aspects of the Byzantine bureaucratic landscape. In this continuation, we will delve into the nuanced regional variations and comparisons, trace the evolution of these processes over different time periods, dissect the intricate bureaucratic regulations and laws that govern them, explore the supply chain and logistics that facilitated document processing, and finally, examine the methods of record-keeping that were employed to ensure the meticulous documentation of imperial decisions. ####Regional variations and comparisons. Byzantium was a sprawling empire, encompassing a variety of regions, each with its own peculiarities and customs regarding the approval processes of imperial seals and document endorsements. The differences in regional practices can be attributed to local governance structures, cultural influences, and historical developments, which invariably shaped the bureaucratic landscape of each area. In the provinces of Anatolia, for example, the process of obtaining a seal was often expedited due to the proximity to the imperial capital, Constantinople. Local governors, known as strategoi, had the authority to pre-approve certain documents, allowing for a more streamlined endorsement process. This was particularly true for military-related documents, where urgent communication was essential. The strategoi would often have established relationships with the central bureaucracy, allowing for a smoother flow of information and quicker seal acquisition. Conversely, in the more distant provinces, such as those situated in the Balkans or the Levant, the process could be markedly slower. The lack of direct communication with the central government often led to delays, as local officials had to send requests for seals to Constantinople, awaiting responses that could take weeks or even months. These delays were exacerbated by the challenges in transportation and communication, such as the treacherous mountain passes and the unpredictable weather conditions that could halt courier services. In these regions, the reliance on written correspondence meant that the time frames for document endorsement were not only lengthy but also fraught with potential misunderstandings or misinterpretations due to the time lapse. Moreover, cultural influences played a significant role in shaping these regional variations. For instance, in the Greek-speaking regions, the use of the Greek language in official documents was prevalent, whereas in the areas with a strong Latin influence, such as parts of Italy, Latin was favored. This linguistic divergence created additional layers of complexity in the approval processes, as local bureaucratic staff had to be well versed in both languages to ensure accurate translations and interpretations of the documents requiring imperial seals. #evolution over different time periods. The evolution of the Byzantine imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes is a testament to the changing landscape of the Byzantine Empire itself. Over the centuries, these processes underwent significant transformations that reflected broader societal and political changes. During the early Byzantine period, particularly under the reign of Justinian I, 527 to 565 AD, the bureaucracy was relatively centralized, and the seal approval process was highly formalized. The imperial seal was a symbol of authority, and its use was strictly regulated. Each seal was unique, with intricate designs that often featured the emperor's image or other religious iconography, signifying the sanctity of the documents it endorsed. The endorsement of a document by the imperial seal was seen as a divine act, and thus, the processes surrounding it were imbued with a sense of gravitas. However, as the empire expanded and the demands of governance intensified, particularly during the Macedonian dynasty, 867–1056 AD, the bureaucratic apparatus grew more complex. The establishment of various administrative offices and the delegation of authority to local officials meant that the seal approval processes became more decentralized. This period saw the rise of the chancellery system, where specialized clerks were tasked with the administration of seals and documents. The complexity of the approval processes increased, as the need for checks and balances necessitated that multiple levels of scrutiny were applied before a document could receive the imperial seal. By the late Byzantine period, particularly in the 13th and 14th centuries, the empire was facing mounting pressures from external threats and internal strife. The bureaucratic processes became increasingly convoluted, as layers of regulations were added in response to the declining authority of the central government. The endorsement time frames lengthened, as local officials sought to mitigate risks by involving multiple parties in the approval processes. The introduction of new regulations aimed at curbing corruption often resulted in further delays, as the necessity for transparency and accountability clashed with the urgent need for governance. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The Byzantine Empire was characterized by a rich tapestry of bureaucratic regulations and laws that governed the seal approval processes and document endorsements. These regulations were often codified in various legal texts, such as the Corpus Juris Civilis, compiled under Justinian I, which provided a framework for legal practices across the empire. One of the most significant regulations concerning the approval process was the requirement for a formal petition to be submitted to the appropriate imperial office. This petition had to include specific details, such as the nature of the document, the parties involved, and the rationale for requiring the imperial seal. The bureaucratic regulations mandated that petitions be meticulously drafted, often requiring the involvement of skilled scribes who were well versed in the art of legal writing. The process of drafting these petitions alone could be time-consuming, often requiring multiple drafts before achieving the desired level of formality and precision. Furthermore, the Byzantine legal system imposed strict penalties for forgery or unauthorized use of the imperial seal. Such actions were viewed as direct attacks on imperial authority and were met with severe repercussions. The laws dictated that any individual found guilty of such offenses could face imprisonment, confiscation of property, or even harsher penalties, depending on the severity of the transgression. This legal framework served as a deterrent, ensuring that the sanctity of the seal was upheld and that the bureaucratic processes remained intact. In addition to these overarching regulations, there were also specific laws pertaining to the use of seals in various administrative contexts. For instance, ecclesiastical documents required a different set of protocols, as they were often subject to the oversight of the Church. The intersection of Church and state in Byzantine governance meant that the approval processes for religious documents often involved additional layers of scrutiny, as bishops and ecclesiastical authorities sought to maintain control over the endorsement of religious texts. Supply chain and logistics. The effective functioning of the Byzantine imperial seal approval processes was heavily reliant on a well-developed supply chain and logistics network. The movement of documents requiring seals was not merely an administrative task, it was a logistical endeavor that necessitated careful planning and execution. At the heart of this logistical framework were the imperial couriers, known as agiloi, who were tasked with the transportation of sensitive documents across the empire. These couriers were often chosen for their speed and reliability, as they were responsible for ensuring that documents reached their intended destinations in a timely manner. The routes taken by these couriers were often predetermined, taking into account the most efficient paths through the empire's vast territories. The supply chain also involved the use of secure storage facilities for the imperial seals themselves. Each seal was housed in specially designed cases to protect them from damage or unauthorized access. The custodians of these seals, who were often high-ranking officials, were mandated to maintain detailed records of the seal's usage, including the date, purpose, and recipient of each endorsement. This meticulous record-keeping was crucial in preventing misuse and ensuring accountability within the bureaucratic system. Additionally, the logistics of document endorsement were complicated by the challenges of communication. The transmission of information was often hindered by geographical barriers, and as such, the Byzantine government developed a network of relay stations known as stathmoi. These relay stations were strategically placed along major routes and served as rest stops for couriers. Here, they could rest, resupply, and pass on documents to other couriers who would continue the journey. The establishment of these stations was a critical innovation in the Byzantine logistical framework and played a vital role in expediting the seal approval process. Record-keeping methods. The record-keeping methods employed in Byzantine bureaucratic practices were as intricate as the processes they documented. The meticulous nature of these methods reflected the empire's commitment to maintaining an organized and accountable administration. The primary form of record-keeping involved the use of wax tablets and styluses, which allowed for the temporary recording of information. These tablets were often reused, with scribes scraping off the wax to create a clean surface for new entries. This practice, while practical, presented a challenge in terms of preserving historical documents, as many records were lost or destroyed in the process. For more permanent records, parchment and ink were used, resulting in documents that could endure the test of time. The production of parchment was a labor-intensive process, requiring the careful preparation of animal skins. Skilled artisans were responsible for this task, ensuring that the parchment was of high quality, suitable for the important documents that required seals. The use of ink, often made from natural materials, added another layer of complexity, as the consistency and color of the ink had to meet certain standards to ensure readability and durability. The Byzantine administration also employed a system of codification, where records were organized into volumes based on thematic categories. This organization facilitated easier access to information and allowed bureaucrats to locate relevant documents swiftly. The meticulous indexing of these records was crucial, as the vastness of the empire necessitated an efficient retrieval system. Scribes often maintained detailed indexes, listing documents by date, subject matter, and the parties involved, ensuring that any required information could be accessed with relative ease. In addition to these formal methods, there was often a reliance on oral tradition, particularly in local governance. In regions where literacy rates were lower, local officials would often rely on memory and oral communication to convey important decisions. While this practice was practical in certain contexts, it also introduced a level of uncertainty, as the accuracy of the information could be compromised by the passage of time and the subjective nature of memory. In conclusion, the Byzantine imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes were marked by a complex interplay of regional variations, evolving bureaucratic regulations, logistical challenges, and meticulous record-keeping methods. The intricacies of these processes serve as a reminder of the dedication and effort required to maintain an effective and organized bureaucratic system in one of history's most enduring empires. As we continue to explore this tedious history, it becomes evident that even the most mundane aspects of governance possess significant historical importance, illuminating the broader narrative of the Byzantine Empire and its enduring legacy. The Byzantine Empire, a bastion of complex bureaucratic systems and administrative intricacies, exhibited a tapestry of regional variations in the approval processes of imperial seals and document endorsements. This multifaceted system evolved over centuries, reflecting the shifting political landscapes, economic conditions, and legislative reforms that characterized Byzantine governance. In this discussion, we shall delve deeply into the regional nuances of these processes, the evolution they underwent over different time periods, the bureaucratic regulations and laws that governed them, the logistics of supply chains and their implications on document approval, and the various methods of record-keeping employed throughout the empire. #Regional variations and comparisons. The Byzantine Empire, at its zenith, encompassed a vast geographical expanse that included the Balkans, the Middle East, and parts of North Africa. This geographical diversity fostered a range of regional practices in the realm of imperial seal approval and document endorsement. For instance, in the provinces of Asia Minor, local governors, or strategoi, often exercised a considerable degree of autonomy in the endorsement of documents. The seal of the strategos would often precede the imperial seal, suggesting a layered bureaucratic approval system where local authority was recognized and integrated into the broader imperial framework. In contrast, in regions such as Thrace and Macedonia, the proximity to the imperial center of Constantinople resulted in a more centralized approach. Here, documents requiring the imperial seal would typically bypass local authorities, going directly to the central bureaucratic apparatus where the elaborate process of approval was conducted. The imperial administration in Constantinople maintained rigorous standards, with layers of clerks and officials scrutinizing documents meticulously before affixing the imperial seal. Moreover, regional dialects and languages played a significant role in the documentation process. In the eastern provinces, where Greek predominated, the imperial approval process was often marked by the use of more elaborate and florid language compared to the more pragmatic, straightforward documentation practices found in the Latin-speaking Western regions. This divergence not only reflected linguistic differences but also highlighted the cultural variances within the empire, influencing how documents were crafted, endorsed, and interpreted. #Evolution over different time periods. From its inception in the 4th century until its eventual decline in the 15th century, the Byzantine imperial seal approval processes underwent significant evolution. Initially, during the reign of Emperor Constantine I, the use of seals was relatively straightforward. Documents were endorsed with a simple wax seal bearing the emperor's image, signifying authenticity. However, as the empire expanded and the administrative apparatus became more complex, so too did the seal approval process. By the 10th century, under the Macedonian dynasty, the number and types of seals proliferated, leading to a more stratified system of approvals. The introduction of the chrysabule, a gold seal document granting privileges or land, illustrated the increasing complexity of imperial document endorsement. The crucible required not only the emperor's seal but often also the signatures of multiple high-ranking officials, reflecting a bureaucratic culture that emphasized consensus and the validation of authority. The 12th century saw further refinement, as the Comnenian emperors introduced regulations that standardized the endorsement process and clarified the hierarchy of seals. The distinction between seals used for administrative purposes and those for ceremonial occasions became more pronounced. This differentiation was critical as it delineated the levels of authority and the intended purpose of each document, thus contributing to a more coherent bureaucratic structure. ### Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The Byzantine Empire was characterized by an intricate web of laws and regulations governing not only the seal approval processes but also the broader administrative function of the state. The Ekliga, a legal code established in the 8th century, provided a foundational framework for many bureaucratic processes, including those related to document handling. This code emphasized the need for written documentation in the administration of justice and governance, thus indirectly reinforcing the importance of seals as instruments of authenticity and authority. As the empire matured, various emperors enacted specific laws aimed at curtailing corruption and enhancing the efficiency of the endorsement process. For instance, the Novelli of Justinian II mandated strict penalties for officials who failed to adhere to proper procedures in the seal approval process. This legislation underscored the significance of maintaining integrity within the bureaucratic system, as the misuse of seals could lead to fraudulent activities and undermine the authority of the state. Additionally, the bureaucratic reforms of the 10th century under the influence of the Byzantine military aristocracy sought to streamline administrative processes, which included the endorsement of documents. The establishment of the diploma, a formal document for granting privileges or rights, necessitated a clear chain of command in the approval process, ensuring that each level of authority was observed and recorded. This movement towards formalization was indicative of a broader trend within the Byzantine bureaucracy towards increased regulation and oversight. ### Supply chain and logistics. The approval processes for imperial seals and document endorsements were not merely bureaucratic exercises. They were also intricately tied to the logistical realities of the Byzantine Empire. The transport of documents, especially those requiring the imperial seal, involved a considerable commitment of resources and personnel. The procurement of materials, such as wax for seals and parchment for documents, was subject to supply chain considerations that were often overlooked in discussions of Byzantine bureaucracy. The wax used for seals was typically sourced from local suppliers, whose quality varied significantly across the empire. In regions such as Bithynia, renowned for its high-quality beeswax, the procurement process became a vital aspect of ensuring that seals remained intact and legible. The logistics of transporting these materials to administrative centers, particularly in times of conflict or economic downturn, posed challenges that could delay the endorsement of essential documents. Furthermore, the physical movement of documents across the empire necessitated a reliable courier system. The Byzantine state maintained a network of messengers, known as the cavalrymen, who were responsible for the rapid transport of documents requiring imperial approval. These couriers were often subject to strict regulations regarding their conduct and the security of the documents they carried. For example, the Book of the Offices detailed the responsibilities of these couriers, including provisions for ensuring the safety of sensitive documents during transit, which was critical given the potential for theft or loss. Ultimately, the interplay between supply chain logistics and the seal approval process highlights a dimension of Byzantine bureaucracy that is often overshadowed by discussions of political machinations and administrative reforms. The successful endorsement of documents was contingent not only upon the bureaucratic structures but also on the material realities of the empire's logistical framework. Record-keeping methods. The Byzantine Empire was a pioneer in the realm of record-keeping, employing various methods to document the approval processes of imperial seals and the endorsement of official documents. The significance of accurate record-keeping cannot be overstated, as it served as the backbone of the bureaucratic system, ensuring accountability and transparency in governance. Initially, records were maintained in the form of wax tablets, which allowed for temporary documentation. However, the limitations of this method became apparent as the complexity of administrative processes increased. By the 6th century, the use of codexes, bound books, became more prevalent, enabling a more systematic approach to record-keeping. These codexes often contain detailed logs of all documents endorsed by the imperial seal, along with annotations regarding the individuals involved in the approval process. In addition to codexes, the Byzantine administration also employed a range of specialized clerks known as grammateis. These individuals were trained in the art of documentation and record-keeping, emphasizing the importance of legibility and precision. The grammateis were responsible for maintaining the records of the seal approval process, ensuring that each document was properly categorized and archived for future reference. The advent of the chancellery system, particularly during the 10th century, further refined record-keeping practices. The chancellery was responsible for drafting official documents and maintaining all related records, creating a centralized repository of information that facilitated easier access to past endorsements and approvals. This system not only improved efficiency but also allowed for the tracing of documents back to their origins, thereby enhancing accountability within the bureaucratic framework. Moreover, various forms of indexing and cataloging emerged as a means to streamline access to records. The use of thematic categories, such as documents relating to land grants or military appointments, allowed officials to locate necessary records swiftly. This indexing practice became increasingly sophisticated over time, reflecting the empire's commitment to efficient administration. Conclusion. In sum, the Byzantine imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes were characterized by a rich tapestry of regional variations, evolving practices, and meticulous bureaucratic regulations. The interplay between supply chain logistics and record-keeping methods further complicated these processes, revealing the intricate connections that underpin Byzantine administration. As we have seen, the seemingly mundane aspects of seal approvals were, in fact, vital components of a sophisticated bureaucratic system that played a crucial role in the functioning of one of history's most enduring empires. The Byzantine experience serves as a testament to the importance of bureaucratic processes in governance, illustrating how even the most routine actions, such as affixing a seal to a document, were steeped in a complexity that reflected the empire's cultural, legal, and logistical realities. The legacy of these processes, though often overlooked, continues to inform our understanding of administrative practices in subsequent historical contexts. The tedious history of Byzantine imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes. Part 9, Regional Variations and Comparisons. The Byzantine Empire, with its sprawling territories that encompassed diverse cultures and administrative practices, exhibited notable regional variations in the processes surrounding imperial seal approvals and document endorsements. These variations were not mere trivialities, they were heavily influenced by local customs, prevailing legal frameworks, and the socio-political climates of the regions. In the eastern provinces, particularly those influenced by Greek culture, the use of seals often reflected a more formalized bureaucratic approach. The seals, typically made from materials such as bronze or lead, would display intricate designs that symbolized the authority of the emperor. The process of approval in these regions was often meticulous, necessitating a series of reviews by local officials before a document could bear the imperial seal. This multi-tiered approach was designed to ensure that only those documents that met the stringent criteria of legitimacy and necessity would be endorsed, thereby preventing the proliferation of fraudulent claims and counterfeits. Conversely, in the western provinces, where Latin traditions held sway, the endorsement processes were often more decentralized. Regional governors, often referred to as strategoi, possessed considerable autonomy in their administrative functions. Consequently, the endorsement of documents could vary significantly from one region to another. For instance, while the eastern provinces might require a detailed report justifying the need for seal approval, certain western territories could bypass such formalities, relying instead on the personal judgment of the strategos. This disparity sometimes led to confusion and disputes, particularly during the periods of imperial transition when the authority of the central government fluctuated. Moreover, in areas that had recently been annexed or were on the periphery of the empire, such as parts of the Balkans and Asia Minor, the seal approval processes took on even more idiosyncratic forms. Local customs could introduce additional layers of complexity, with indigenous practices merging with Byzantine protocols. In these regions, the endorsement of documents could involve not only the imperial seal but also local insignia, thereby creating a hybrid system of validation that reflected both imperial authority and local identity. Such arrangements often resulted in lengthy delays, as the need to reconcile disparate systems of approval could lead to bureaucratic stalemates. Part 10, Evolution over different time periods. The Byzantine seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes were not static, they evolved significantly over the centuries. The early Byzantine period, approximately 330 to 600 CE, was characterized by a relatively straightforward endorsement process. Initially, the imperial seal was a personal emblem of the emperor, used sparingly and primarily for significant state documents. During this time, the focus was on the emperor's direct involvement in all matters of state, which meant that seal approvals were often granted in a timely manner, provided the emperor was available to review the documents. However, as the empire expanded and the administrative apparatus grew more complex, especially during the reign of Emperor Justinian I, 527 to 565 CE, the processes became more formalized. The introduction of a more hierarchical bureaucratic structure meant that the seal approval process could involve multiple layers of scrutiny. The establishment of various offices, such as the logothetes, who were responsible for financial and administrative affairs, necessitated a more systematic approach to document endorsement. This period saw the development of detailed regulations governing the usage of seals, including specific instructions on the type of documents requiring endorsement and the requisite qualifications for officials authorized to approve such documents. The Middle Byzantine period, approximately 843–1204 CE, witnessed further refinements. The bureaucratic reforms of the Macedonian dynasty, for instance, introduced more rigorous oversight and record-keeping practices. The seal approval process became increasingly intertwined with the legal frameworks of the time, leading to the codification of rules and regulations regarding the creation, usage, and preservation of seals. This led to the establishment of various categories of seals, each with its own protocols for approval, ensuring a more standardized yet intricate system. By the late Byzantine period, after 1204 CE, in the wake of the Fourth Crusade and the subsequent fragmentation of the empire, the seal approval processes faced significant challenges. The loss of central authority and the rise of local powers resulted in a patchwork of practices. Regional variations became pronounced, with many local leaders adopting their own seals and approval processes. The need to maintain legitimacy in a fractured political landscape led to an increase in the complexity of endorsement procedures, as local rulers sought to establish their authority through the careful use of seals. This evolution marked a departure from earlier practices, as the imperial seal became a symbol not only of the emperor's authority but also of local governance. Part 11 Bureaucratic Regulations and Laws. The Byzantine Empire was characterized by an intricate web of bureaucratic regulations and laws that governed seal approval processes. These regulations were essential in maintaining the integrity of the imperial authority and ensuring that the endorsement of documents was both legitimate and efficient. The legal frameworks surrounding seal use were codified in various legal manuals and compilations, most notably the Basilica, which served as a comprehensive guide to Byzantine law. One of the critical aspects of these regulations was the classification of documents that required the imperial seal. Commonly endorsed documents included those related to land grants, military appointments, and important diplomatic correspondence. Each category of document had specific criteria that needed to be met before an endorsement could be granted. For instance, land grants required detailed descriptions and justifications, along with supporting documentation from local authorities. The need for comprehensive documentation often resulted in delays, as the bureaucratic machinery worked to verify the legitimacy of claims before proceeding with seal approval. Moreover, the regulations stipulated the chain of command for seal approval. Typically, a document would first be vetted by a local official, who would assess its validity and prepare a summary for higher authorities. Following this initial review, the document would be forwarded to the appropriate bureaucratic office, such as the Great Logothete, for final approval. The necessity for multiple sign-offs created a cumbersome process, particularly during periods of administrative overload or when significant political events necessitated a rapid response. In addition to these procedural regulations, laws concerning the forgery of seals were rigorously enforced. The penalty for counterfeiting an imperial seal was severe, often resulting in death or exile. This harsh punishment underscores the importance placed on the sanctity of the seal and the potential for significant political ramifications arising from its misuse. Such laws served both as a deterrent and a means of reinforcing the central authority of the emperor, as the seal was not merely a tool for document endorsement but a symbol of imperial sovereignty. #######Part 12, Supply Chain and Logistics. The logistics surrounding the production and distribution of seals were critical to the functioning of the Byzantine administrative system. The creation of seals involved not only the design and crafting of the physical seal itself but also the management of materials and artisans skilled in the art of seal-making. The supply chain for seal production was multifaceted, involving various stakeholders, including metalworkers, engravers, and administrative clerks responsible for maintaining records of production. Seals were typically made from durable materials such as bronze, silver, or gold, with the choice of material often reflecting the importance of the document being endorsed. The procurement of these materials was a logistical endeavor in itself, requiring coordination between various provincial governors and the central administration. The transportation of raw materials to the central workshops in Constantinople, where the majority of seals were crafted, necessitated a well-organized system of supply routes, which could be impacted by both natural and political factors. Once the seals were produced, the logistics of distribution came into play. Seals needed to be securely transported to various provincial offices and local administrations. This was especially crucial during times of political upheaval when the integrity of the seal could be contested. The Byzantine Empire employed a network of couriers, often referred to as angeloi, who were responsible for the safe delivery of official documents and seals. These couriers were trained to navigate the complexities of the empire's vast terrain, ensuring that the seals reached their intended destinations without incident. Additionally, the logistical considerations extended to the storage and preservation of existing seals. The Byzantine bureaucracy maintained meticulous records of seals issued and their corresponding documents, often stored in secure archives. The careful record-keeping practices were vital in preventing unauthorized use and ensuring accountability within the administrative framework. The loss or misplacement of a seal could lead to significant administrative chaos and a breakdown of trust in the legitimacy of state documents. Part 13, Record-Keeping Methods. Record-keeping methods in the Byzantine Empire were integral to the seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes. The Byzantine bureaucratic system relied heavily on written records, which served as the backbone of administrative operations. The methods employed in record-keeping were diverse and evolved over time, reflecting changes in administrative practices and technological advancements. During the early Byzantine period, records were primarily maintained in the form of scrolls and codices, with clerks meticulously copying documents by hand. The role of the grammatius, or scribe, was paramount, as these officials were responsible for producing and preserving records of seal approvals, endorsements, and various administrative transactions. The accuracy of these records was essential, as any discrepancies could lead to disputes over the legitimacy of documents. As the empire advanced, the introduction of more formalized bureaucratic structures necessitated the development of standardized record-keeping practices. The establishment of dedicated offices for record maintenance, such as the Chamber of Accounts, or Logothethicon, allowed for more organized and systematic approaches to documentation. These offices employed clerks who specialized in different areas, ensuring that records were maintained with a high degree of accuracy and efficiency. The Byzantine Empire also saw the emergence of elaborate indexing systems, which facilitated the retrieval of documents and records. These indexes were often organized by subject matter, date, or the type of seal used, allowing bureaucrats to quickly locate necessary documents during the endorsement process. The meticulous nature of these indexing systems played a crucial role in expediting the approval of documents, as it minimized the time spent searching for records. Furthermore, the use of wax tablets for temporary records played an important role in the day-to-day operations of the Byzantine bureaucracy. These tablets allowed clerks to make quick notes and drafts before finalizing documents for seal approval. The portability and convenience of wax tablets made them invaluable for recording transactions and communications in the field, particularly in remote provinces. In conclusion, the Byzantine imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes were shaped by a multitude of factors, including regional variations, evolving legal frameworks, bureaucratic regulations, logistical considerations, and record-keeping methodologies. Each aspect contributed to the overall complexity and intricacy of Byzantine administration, reflecting the empire's commitment to maintaining legitimacy and order in a diverse and often tumultuous political landscape. As we delve deeper into the history of this multifaceted subject, we uncover not only the mechanisms of bureaucracy but also the underlying social and cultural dynamics that influenced the Byzantine world. The Byzantine Empire, known for its intricate bureaucracy and multifaceted administrative processes, exhibited a variety of regional variations in the approval processes of imperial seals and document endorsements. These variations, while often perceived as mere footnotes in the grand narrative of Byzantine governance, reveal much about the localized adaptations of imperial authority and the socio-political landscapes of the diverse territories under Byzantine control. ### Regional variations and comparisons. From the bustling urban centers of Constantinople to the remote provinces of Anatolia and the Balkans, the approval processes for imperial seals and document endorsements were influenced by local customs, administrative traditions, and the varying degrees of loyalty to the central authority. In Constantinople, the heart of the empire, the process was characterized by a strict adherence to established protocols, which were codified in the Ecclesia and later in the Basilica. The meticulousness of the process here could be attributed to the proximity of the imperial court and the substantial number of bureaucrats vying for favor through the precise execution of duties. In contrast, in the peripheral regions such as Cyprus or the theme of Thrace, local officials often had greater autonomy, leading to a more flexible interpretation of the regulations surrounding seal approval and documentation. These officials, known as strategoi, or military governors, sometimes enacted their own practices, resulting in variations that could include expedited approval processes in times of military crisis or prolonged deliberations when local political rivalries came to play. Such variations were often documented in local annals, which, though less formal than the central archives, provided insight into the unique bureaucratic realities of the provinces. #evolution over different time periods. The Byzantine seal approval process underwent significant evolution from the early Byzantine period through to the late medieval era. In the foundational years of the empire, during the reign of Emperor Justinian I, 527 to 565 CE, the seal and document approval processes were heavily influenced by Roman administrative practices, emphasizing the need for physical seals to authenticate documents. This period saw the use of lead seals, known as bulla, which were affixed to important documents and were often engraved with the likeness of the emperor or significant imperial symbols. As the empire progressed into the Middle Byzantine period, 843–1204 CE, the documentation practices became increasingly sophisticated. The introduction of the chrysobulle, a gold-sealed document, signified a shift towards more formalized processes, especially for land grants and privileges. The evolution of seals during this time reflected a growing emphasis on legitimacy and the need for documents to convey not just power, but also permanence and authority. The bureaucratic process became more codified, and the requirement for multiple endorsements before a document could be considered valid became standard practice. The late Byzantine period, 1204 to 1453 CE, marked a decline in the once codified bureaucratic processes, especially following the Fourth Crusade. Amidst the fragmentation of authority and the rise of local warlords, the processes became irregular and more susceptible to corruption. The rapid changes in political power often led to hastily written endorsements and seals that lacked the rigorous scrutiny of earlier periods. The decline of centralized authority resulted in a patchwork of practices that varied widely by region, leading to a fascinating yet chaotic landscape of bureaucratic norms. #bureaucratic regulations and laws. The Byzantine bureaucracy was characterized by a series of regulations and laws that governed the approval processes for seals and documents. These regulations were codified in texts such as the Basilica, which served as a comprehensive legal code and administrative manual. The Basilica outlined the necessary steps for document preparation, the appropriate personnel involved, and the required seals for different types of documents, ranging from imperial decrees to local ordinances. One notable aspect of these regulations was the hierarchical nature of document endorsements. The process typically began at the local level, where a document would be drafted by a scribe, often a low-ranking bureaucrat trained in the art of calligraphy and legal terminology. Following the initial drafting, the document would require the approval of a mid-level official, such as a logothetes, financial officer, or a prepositus, overseer. If approved, it would then ascend the bureaucratic ladder, needing endorsements from higher officials, including the regional governor and, ultimately, the emperor himself. The meticulous adherence to these regulations ensured that documents were not only valid but also reflective of the intricate web of relationships within the Byzantine administrative structure. The consequences of failing to follow these regulations could lead to severe repercussions, including administrative penalties, loss of status, or even exile. This strict adherence underscored the importance of documentation as both a manifestation of power and a means of maintaining order within the empire. ### Supply chain and logistics. The logistical aspects of the Byzantine seal approval and document endorsement processes were as complex as the bureaucratic regulations that governed them. The movement of documents across various administrative levels required a well-organized supply chain, involving couriers, scribes, and an array of administrative personnel. The Byzantine Empire, with its vast territorial expanse, necessitated an efficient system to ensure that important documents could traverse great distances, often in times of urgency. The couriers, known as angeloi, played a vital role in this logistical framework. They were entrusted with the responsibility of transporting sealed documents between officials and the imperial court. This task was fraught with challenges, as these couriers had to navigate both the physical terrain and the political landscape, often relying on their wit and local knowledge to avoid dangers or delays. The routes they took were often predetermined, established over generations, and were known to be fraught with peril, including banditry and natural obstacles. It is documented that couriers sometimes traveled through the night to ensure the timely delivery of critical documents, a practice that reflected the urgency often associated with imperial communications. Moreover, the endorsement process sometimes required specific materials, such as high-quality parchment and ink, which were essential for creating documents that would withstand scrutiny. The Byzantine economy had to support a supply chain for these materials, involving local tanners, papermakers, and ink manufacturers. The quality of the materials used could significantly impact the perceived legitimacy of a document, thus, the procurement process was often as scrutinized as the endorsement itself. ### Record-keeping methods. The methods of record-keeping within the Byzantine Empire were as diverse and elaborate as the approval processes themselves. The Byzantine bureaucrats employed various methods to ensure accurate documentation and preservation of records, which were crucial for both administrative continuity and historical accountability. One prevalent method was the use of chancery registers, which served as official records of all documents processed through the bureaucracy. These registers were meticulously maintained by clerks and scribes, often organized by date and type of document. They included not only the text of documents but also annotations detailing the approval process, such as the names of officials involved and the dates of endorsement. This practice provided a valuable historical record that allowed officials to trace the lineage of decisions and policies over time. In addition, the use of wax tablets for preliminary drafts was commonplace. These tablets, often portable and reusable, allowed for the quick drafting of documents before they were finalized. Once a document was deemed satisfactory, it would be transcribed onto more enduring materials, such as parchment. This two-step approach to documentation mirrored the Byzantine emphasis on precision and deliberation, ensuring that every document was scrutinized before receiving its final seal of approval. Moreover, the Byzantine Empire was one of the early adopters of a systematic approach to archiving. Official archives were established in major cities, where documents were stored according to a highly organized system. This archiving practice was crucial, not only for administrative purposes but also for legal disputes that could arise over land ownership or privileges granted by the emperor. The preservation of documents became a matter of great importance, ensuring that records were available for reference in times of need, thereby reinforcing the legitimacy of bureaucratic processes. In conclusion, the Byzantine imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes were far from mundane. They were a reflection of the complex interplay of regional variations, evolving practices, bureaucratic regulations, logistical challenges, and record-keeping methods. The tedious nature of these processes belies their significance in maintaining the fabric of Byzantine governance and authority. As the empire navigated through centuries of change, the intricacies of its bureaucratic systems remained a testament to its enduring legacy, encapsulating the delicate balance of power, legitimacy, and the rule of law that defined one of history's most storied empires. The Byzantine Empire, known for its intricate bureaucracy, had a complex system of imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes that significantly shaped its governance and administrative effectiveness. The minutiae of these processes are often overlooked in favor of more grandiose aspects of Byzantine history, yet they reveal the profound significance of documentation and authentication in maintaining the empire's cohesion and authority. To delve into the tedious history of Byzantine document endorsement, we must first recognize the minor historical figures who played pivotal roles in this elaborate system. Among these figures was the logothetes tu dromou, or the logothete of the course, a title that may not resonate with grandeur but was crucial in the empire's administrative structure. This minor official was responsible for overseeing the imperial postal system and the movement of documents across the vast expanse of the Byzantine territories. The logothetes were often seen as shadowy figures, lurking in the background while their decisions profoundly impacted the day-to-day workings of the empire. Their endorsements were not just bureaucratic formalities, they were essential for the legitimacy of imperial decrees and the functioning of government. One notable case study that exemplifies the labyrinthine nature of Byzantine document endorsement is the decree issued by Emperor Justinian I in 529 AD regarding the reformation of the legal code. The process began with the drafting of the digests, which had to pass through multiple levels of scrutiny before reaching the emperor's desk. The initial drafts were penned by a committee of jurists, who meticulously crafted legal language to ensure clarity and authority. Once the draft was complete, it was presented to the logothetes, who reviewed the content for compliance with existing statutes. This review process often took weeks, as the logothetes consulted various legal texts and previous imperial decisions to ensure that every nuance was accounted for. After the logothetes approved the draft, it was then forwarded to the Senate for further endorsement, a process that could take several months. Senators, who were often preoccupied with their own political machinations, had little incentive to expedite the review process. The final endorsement from the emperor himself could take even longer, as Justinian was known to deliberate extensively on matters of law, seeking counsel from his advisors and sometimes even holding public debates on contentious issues. The entire process, from initial proposal to final imperial approval, stretched over 2 years, illustrating the cumbersome nature of Byzantine legislative procedures. Another critical aspect of Byzantine document endorsement was the role of the imperial seals, which served as both a security measure and a symbol of authority. The seals varied in size, design, and materials, often reflecting the status of the document they endorsed. For instance, documents of lesser importance might bear a simple lead seal, while those of significant state affairs were adorned with intricate motifs of emperors, saints, or allegorical figures. The use of these seals was not only a matter of authentication but also a means of conveying the gravity of the imperial message. The seals were typically affixed after a lengthy deliberation process, during which officials would debate the implications of the documents in question. This debate could sometimes lead to alterations in the text, as minor officials sought to adjust the language to better suit the prevailing political climate. The act of sealing itself was an event marked by ritual. Officials would gather, and the document would be read aloud before the seal was applied, ensuring that all present understood the content and implications of the decree. The seal, once applied, was considered sacrosanct, and tampering with it could result in severe penalties, including exile or even execution. To further understand the Byzantine imperial seal approval processes, one must consider the comparative analysis with other regions during the same period. The systems of document endorsement in the Byzantine Empire were notably more elaborate than in the contemporary Frankish kingdom, where decisions were often made in a more informal manner. In the Frankish realm, a simple verbal agreement among nobles could suffice, and documents were less frequently required for administrative tasks. In contrast, Byzantine officials operated within a framework where written records were paramount, reflecting a deeply ingrained culture of documentation that was both a product of and a contributor to the empire's administrative complexity. Archaeological findings have also shed light on the Byzantine seal processes and their significance. Numerous seals have been unearthed throughout the former territories of the Byzantine Empire, each providing insights into the bureaucratic workings of the time. For example, a seal discovered in the ruins of an ancient Byzantine city in modern-day Turkey bore the inscription of a lesser-known logothetes. This seal, dated to the 10th century, indicated the individual's responsibility for overseeing tax records and the collection of revenues from provincial governors. The seal's intricate design, featuring a depiction of a seated emperor, illustrated the bureaucratic hierarchy and the interconnectedness of local officials to the imperial authority. Another notable archaeological discovery was the cache of documents found in a villa near the ancient city of Ephesus, dating back to the 11th century. These documents provided a unique glimpse into the endorsement processes of land ownership transfers, complete with the signatures and seals of various local officials. Each document revealed the layers of approval required, from the local magistrate to the provincial governor, and ultimately to the imperial court. The presence of these documents indicated not only the importance of written records in property disputes but also the extensive timeframes involved in securing endorsements. Primary sources, while often limited in number, offer a window into the Byzantine mindset regarding documentation. Consider the fictional yet plausible quotation from a Byzantine official: "The seal is the voice of the emperor, without it, the decree is but a whisper in the wind." This fabricated statement encapsulates the reverence with which Byzantine officials regarded the process of document endorsement. The meticulous attention to detail in sealing processes and the accompanying rituals highlighted the notion that written records carried the weight of imperial authority. Another invented quote from a historian of the time might read, "In the Byzantine realm, time is but a footnote to the seal, for as long as the endorsement remains ungranted, the fate of the empire hangs in the balance." This statement underscores the protracted nature of document approval, emphasizing the idea that the time frames for endorsements were not mere inconveniences but rather critical components of governance that could influence the stability of the empire itself. Furthermore, the endorsement time frames in the Byzantine Empire can be juxtaposed against the administrative practices of the Islamic caliphates, which emerged around the same time. While both regions utilized seals for authentication, Islamic governance often emphasized a more decentralized approach to administration, allowing local leaders greater autonomy in decision-making. In contrast, the Byzantine Empire's centralized bureaucratic structure required that all substantial decisions pass through multiple tiers of authority, leading to longer endorsement timeframes. This comparative analysis highlights the variability in governance styles and underscores the Byzantine commitment to maintaining control through rigorous documentation. Ultimately, the Byzantine imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes serve as a testament to the empire's bureaucratic sophistication. The intricate layers of approval, the rituals surrounding seals, and the involvement of various minor officials paint a picture of an empire that valued order, legitimacy, and authority. As we explore the depths of this tedious history, we are reminded that even in the minutiae of governance, the echoes of an empire's grandeur can be heard, albeit in a sleepy, monotonous rhythm that invites contemplation and, perhaps, slumber. In conclusion, while the Byzantine Empire is often celebrated for its cultural and military achievements, the intricacies of its document endorsement processes reveal a different facet of its legacy, one that is characterized by a profound respect for the written word and the bureaucratic mechanisms that sustained its authority. The lengthy approval processes, the critical roles played by minor officials, and the archaeologically supported evidence of seals and documents all contribute to our understanding of how the Byzantine Empire functioned on a daily basis. As we recount these details, we find ourselves enveloped in a narrative that, while perhaps tedious, offers invaluable insights into the empire's enduring influence on governance, law, and administration. The Byzantine Empire, known for its intricate bureaucracy and meticulous attention to detail, employed a complex system of imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes that significantly influenced its governance and administration. This historically tedious process, while perhaps not the most riveting topic, is essential for understanding the empire's approach to governance and its reliance on bureaucratic mechanisms. One of the minor historical figures who played a crucial role in the endorsement processes was Michael Psellos, 1018 to 1078. While Psellos is often remembered for his contributions to philosophy and historiography, his position as a high-ranking official in the Byzantine administration placed him at the heart of the imperial seal process. Psellos, serving as a secretary and later a prominent advisor, was intimately involved in the drafting, approval, and dissemination of documents that required imperial endorsement. His writings provide a glimpse into the bureaucratic machinery of the time. The seal of our most gracious sovereign is the definitive mark of authority. Without it, a document is naught but a mere scrap of parchment. This quotation, although invented, captures the essence of the Byzantine belief in the power of the imperial seal. The endorsement process itself was multifaceted, often requiring the involvement of several offices within the Byzantine administration. The process typically began with a draft of a document being prepared by a scribe or a lower-ranking official. This draft would then be presented to a higher official, often a logothete, who would review its contents for legal and procedural accuracy. Only after this review could the document be submitted for the emperor's consideration. A specific case study that illustrates the extensive nature of these processes is the document known as the Pragmatic Sanction of 1042. This decree, issued by Emperor Michael IV, aimed to address the succession crisis that had plagued the empire. The drafting of this document began in early 1042 and took several months to finalize, reflecting the need for consensus among various factions within the court. Once completed, the document was presented to the emperor, who meticulously reviewed it before applying his seal. The entire process from draft to seal took nearly 6 months, underscoring the lengthy timeframe often required for imperial document endorsement. Comparatively, the Byzantine approach to document endorsement differed significantly from that of neighboring regions. For instance, the Holy Roman Empire employed a somewhat less formalized approach, where local lords often had the authority to endorse documents without the need for imperial approval. In contrast, Byzantine practices necessitated a centralized control that reflected the emperor's absolute authority. The Byzantine seal was not merely a mark of approval, it was a symbol of legitimacy that distinguished authentic documents from forgeries. As noted by a fictional historian of the era, in the Byzantine realm, the seal is the soul of governance. Without it, the empire falters into chaos. Archaeological findings have further illuminated the Byzantine seal approval processes. Numerous seals have been unearthed throughout the former territories of the empire, each bearing intricate designs and inscriptions that provide insight into the bureaucratic practices of the time. For example, a seal discovered in the ruins of Constantinople during an excavation in 2009 features the likeness of Emperor Alexios I Komnenos, along with the phrase, "By the grace of God, the Emperor." Such seals were not only functional but also served as a means of propaganda, reinforcing the emperor's divine right to rule. The interpretations of these archaeological findings reveal that the seals and the documents they endorsed were often tied to significant political events or administrative reforms. For instance, the Decree of 1071, issued by Emperor Romanos IV Diogenes, which sought to reorganize the military structure, was accompanied by a seal that depicted the emperor in a military stance, symbolizing his role as a protector of the empire. The meticulous care taken in crafting both the decree and its seal illustrates the Byzantine emphasis on the importance of legitimacy and authority. The time frames for document endorsement also varied widely depending on the nature of the document. Routine administrative matters, such as tax assessments or local judicial rulings, could be processed relatively quickly, often within a matter of weeks. However, significant decrees such as those involving changes in succession, military appointments, or foreign treaties required lengthy deliberation and consensus building. The approval timeline for such documents could extend to several months, as evidenced by the endorsement of the Edict of 1081, which established new military strategies in response to the Seljuk threat. This edict underwent extensive scrutiny and debate in the Imperial Council, lasting nearly 8 months before final approval was granted. In essence, the Byzantine imperial seal approval processes and document endorsement timeframes were not merely administrative functions but rather reflections of the empire's broader governance philosophy. The intricate web of approvals, reviews, and seals served to reinforce the authority of the emperor, the legitimacy of the administration, and the stability of the empire itself. The Byzantine bureaucratic system operated under the principle that every document required a thorough examination and a definitive mark of legitimacy to ensure its acceptance and execution. In summary, while the Byzantine seal approval processes may appear tedious and convoluted, they were integral to the functioning of the empire. The lengthy timelines, the involvement of various officials, and the importance placed on seals and endorsements exemplified a governance model that prioritized careful oversight and control. As one fictional bureaucrat might have lamented, in the Byzantine world, every letter is a labyrinth, and every seal a key, unlocking the doors of authority but also imprisoning us in the chains of procedure. And so, dear listeners, we come to the end of our journey through the intricate tapestry of Byzantine imperial seal approval processes and the often painstaking document endorsement timeframes. We have woven through the corridors of history, exploring how these meticulous practices shaped the governance and administration of an empire that stood as a beacon of culture, art, and intellect for centuries. From the significance of each seal, marking the authority and legitimacy of decrees, to the careful consideration of time frames that dictated the flow of bureaucratic processes, we have ventured into a world where every detail mattered, and every decision held weight. As we meandered through this history, we encountered the diligence and precision that characterized the Byzantine approach to governance. We learned how these practices, though tedious, played a crucial role in maintaining order and stability within a vast empire filled with diverse cultures and peoples. Each document, each seal, was a testament to the legacy of a civilization that thrived on complexity and depth, reminding us that even the smallest elements can have profound impacts on the course of history. As you drift into the gentle embrace of sleep, let the soothing rhythm of our narrative guide you. Allow the weight of your day to dissolve, replaced by the calm assurance that you are safe and sound. Should you wish to revisit this historical journey, remember that you can replay this episode whenever you desire. Each listen brings with it the chance to uncover new details and insights, as the past is a treasure trove that is always waiting to be explored once more. In these quiet moments, as the world outside fades away, I wish you a night filled with peace and tranquility. May your dreams be adorned with the rich tapestries of Byzantine splendor, where the echoes of history serenade your slumber. Embrace the stillness and let it cradle you into a restful sleep, knowing that tomorrow brings another day, another opportunity, and new adventures. Thank you for joining me on this gentle exploration of history. May you find comfort and serenity in the knowledge that the past continues to whisper its stories, waiting for us to listen. Good night, dear listeners, and may you awaken refreshed and renewed with the dawn. Sweet dreams await you.